Godzilla vs. Destoroyah is the 22nd entry of the Godzilla series, and the end of the Heisei series. This movie is notable for being the movie where Godzilla dies again, and would introduce a fan-favorite monster, Destoroyah. Now, as I've gone out of order, I will have to explain the Heisei series at the end of said series. The Heisei series is a collection of 7 movies made from 1984 to 1995 that follow a second Godzilla that appeared 30 years after the original in 1954. This series follows characters that make appearances across several movies, most notably a psychic girl known as Miki Saigusa. The series started with original monsters before quickly bringing back popular pre-established monsters. Anyways, enough about the information that everyone already knows, and on to more information that everyone already knows. This movie was directed by Takao Okura, written by Kazuki Omori, composed by Akira Fukube, with effects by Koichi Kawakita. The film stars Megumi Odaka, Yasufumi Hayashi, Takuro Tatsumi, Akira Nakao, Momoko Kochi, and Sayaka Osawa. Following the events of Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, Godzilla is going into a meltdown mode, and Junior is nowhere to be found. A scientist has created micro-oxygen, which is used for making fish big and overall is beneficial to society, except for the part where it can be turned into an oxygen destroyer, which happens to be the weapon that killed the first Godzilla. Speaking of said weapon, it revived a colony of tiny creatures that grow into Destoroyah. Junior's found after a bunch of dead whales are found. Ultimately, it's found out Godzilla's meltdown will lead to the end of the world, so humanity is forced to come up with a solution to this while having to also deal with Destoroyah. And then Godzilla dies at the end. Godzilla vs. Destoroyah is a fan-favorite movie. Many people call it the best Godzilla movie ever, and to be honest, I don't agree. Me and this movie don't get along very well, at least from what I remember. Because it's been at least 5 years since I've seen this movie. I remember liking the monster stuff, but thinking the human plot was boring and forgettable. Which younger me may be right, as I cannot remember the human plot for the movie. That is why I only talked about the monster plot. Anyways, I guess there is a question to answer. Is Godzilla vs. Destoroyah the absolute slog I remember it being? So I watched it. The answer is yes. Oh god, it's just as bad as I remembered it being. The movie is just so fucking boring. I was struggling to stay awake for parts of the movie. I found it so hard to focus on the movie. It feels like nothing really happens until Junior shows up, and then it just goes straight to the final battle. It felt kind of unfocused, and the effects are just bad. There is a big difference between the effects of Godzilla 84 and Violante compared to Space Godzilla and Destoroyah. It is a massive drop-off. Too many scenes in this movie with just really bad effects, like the scenes with aggregate Destoroyahs crawling around and they're just half-heartedly sliding on the ground with their legs slightly moving. Destoroyah never flaps its wings while it flies, so it's just gliding around. And it just looks really bad. Just the over-reliance on beam effects and everything really shows just how bad the effects got, especially with the fact that the suits are really stiff and cannot move, so the fights really do heavily rely on the beam battles, which are boring to watch. There's no real action. They're standing there shooting each other. And the occasional scenes we do get of them actually going hand-to-hand combat is little hug fights and slaps. It's really boring, and I don't like it. Pacing itself is also just abysmal. The movie just moves at the pace of a snail on salt, and I struggle to stay awake for most of the beginning. Also, Destoroyah as a monster is also extremely overhyped by the fanbase. I love the idea of a creature created by the single weapon to kill Godzilla, and I do like its earlier forms, but Destoroyah's final form just does not look good. It's nowhere near the ultimate Godzilla villain it's made out to be. Destoroyah is just boring. Final battle itself is boring. Really, the only things I liked were the music and the final scene with Junior being revived. I'm really disappointed by this movie. It's one of the most universally loved Godzilla movies, but I simply just don't like it. It's boring and has really bad effects, and to be honest, all those things ruin what is supposed to be a big emotional moment of Godzilla's death. I know it's a fan favorite, but I'm not a fan of it myself.